Ever cracked open a German textbook and thought, wow, this language is something else?
Oh.
Huh, you're not alone. Today we'll try to unlock the secrets of the German language, like where did it even come from? And why does it have to be so complicated? Get ready to impress your friends.
Yeah.
You might even be able to decipher a word or two by the end of this deep dive on.
And the funny thing is, once you get German, it's actually incredibly logical.
Okay.
It just takes a bit of, wrapping your head around the why, then it clicks.
I love that. Okay, so before we decode German grammar, I have to know, did you know German is the second most used language for science in the whole world?
It's true. The German language, everything you need to know, even says it's right up there with Nobel Prize winners.
Wow.
And it's not just science. Did you know that German has the largest number of native speakers in the entire EU?
Really? I had no idea. More German speakers than Spanish speakers in Europe.
Oh, yeah. It's a language woven into history, culture, global innovation, you name it.
Wow. So, where did this powerhouse of a language even come from?
Well, like most languages, it's been on quite a journey. You got to go back to 500 BCE
CE, okay.
to a language called Proto-Germanic, probably from somewhere around Scandinavia, give or take. Over a few centuries, it started to branch out, evolve into different dialects in different regions, and then comes a real turning point.
What's that?
The High German sound shift.
Sound shift? That sounds intense.
Okay.
Like a linguistic earthquake?
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine a seismic shift in pronunciation, especially consonants, that swept through the southern and central parts of where German was spoken sometime between the 3rd and 5th centuries. It's like dominoes, really. This is where High German and Low German dialects split, and it set the stage for the standardized German Hochdeutsch that we usually think of today.
So this sound shift was like the big bang moment for the German language.
Yeah.
But before we get into all that Hochdeutsch, I'm curious about the word Deutsch itself. It seems like it's everywhere. Deutschland, Deutsche Bank. What's the story there?
Deutsch actually tells us a lot about how German speakers saw their own language way back when. It all goes back to an old Proto-Germanic word, Theudisk, meaning of the people or of the folk. This was back when Latin was the language, especially for academics and the church. So Deutsch was a way of saying, this is our language, the everyday language spoken by everyday people.
It's really interesting how language is so closely connected to identity. Even all the way back then, it was our language versus their language. But didn't Martin Luther, shake things up in the Deutsch department a bit?
Oh, absolutely. The rise of Hochdeutsch, that standard German we were just talking about, is totally tied to Martin Luther's famous translation of the Bible.
Right. I always wondered how standard German came to be. I guess that's the story for after the break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Okay, so we're back and ready to hear all about Martin Luther and, how one guy's translation work had this massive impact on German.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible, isn't it?
Totally. So how did a translation change things so much?
Well, Luther's translation of the Bible in 1522, it wasn't just, a religious thing. It ended up being this pivotal moment for the whole German language.
Okay.
He could have gone with a really obscure German dialect, something only, scholars would understand back then, but instead he kind of goes and does the opposite.
Well, like making the Bible a page-turner.
Kind of. He chose this mix of East Central German, his own native dialect, and then threw in bits from some other High German dialects. This made the Bible relatable to way more people, a much wider audience than your average scholar.
Instead of making the Bible this exclusive club, he brought it to the masses. Pretty smart move.
Right, and get this was happening right when the printing press was taking off, so Luther's Bible, this down-to-earth, easy-to-understand version, it spread like wildfire, it became massively popular, and guess what? With all those copies floating around, Hochdeutsch became the standard for writing in German.
Yeah, I could see that. It's like he created a bestseller by accident and shaped the whole language while he was at it. So what about those dialects, though?
Ah, yes. Over time, that standard written form, it did start to influence how people spoke, too. But even with the standardized version, you can't just wipe out all those rich dialects.
Yeah, totally. Think about Germany's cultural landscape. There's got to be some fascinating dialects still kicking around today, right?
Oh, absolutely. Think of Hochdeutsch as the base, and then imagine all these regional dialects as this colorful tapestry on top of it. That's a big part of what makes German so interesting.
I like that. Okay, so give us a quick tour then. What are some of the most unique dialects someone traveling through Germany might come across?
All right, well, if you're ever in southeastern Germany, get ready for Bayerisch, also known as Bavarian.
Okay, Bavarian, got it.
Now, on paper, it might look kind of close to standard German, but the pronunciation, Whole different ball game. They've got these unique vowel sounds. And the melody, forget about it. It's like its own thing.
So, like, you could think you know a word, but then you hear it in Bavarian, you're like, what did they just say?
Haha, exactly. And then hop over to Switzerland and you'll bump into Schweizerdeutsch, Swiss German, that is. Imagine German, but it's like hanging out with its French and Italian neighbors and picking up some things along the way.
Uh-huh.
It's so different that even some native German speakers might struggle to keep up.
Wow. It's like a language within a language.
You got it. And we can't forget about Austria, right? Österreichisches Deutsch, or Austrian German to you. Well, it's got its own whole vocabulary and pronunciation quirks. It's like the difference between American and British English. You can generally understand each other, but there are those quirks, those little differences that add a little spice.
I love that each region has its own way of speaking, its own personality. But you mentioned another dialect before, Sächsisch, and that one sounds especially intriguing.
Yes. Sächsisch. Mostly spoken in Eastern Germany, and let me tell you, it's famous for tripping people up.
Is that so?
Oh, yeah. Even seasoned German speakers will do a double take sometimes because the rhythm and intonation are so unique, it keeps you on your toes.
Uh-huh. Okay, I'm adding that to my list of must-hear dialects. So we've got the foundation with Hochdeutsch, and then this whole tapestry of dialects. But what about German itself? Beyond just how it's spoken, what makes it sound, well, so German? You know what I mean? It's like you can almost spot a German word out in the wild, even if you don't know what it means. What is it about German that makes it stand out like that?
Well, let's just say it has a few calling cards. For one, get ready to capitalize every noun you see. I'm talking every single noun.
No way. English likes to keep it simple. Just capitalize the proper nouns, you know. German editors must have their work cut out for them.
Tell me about it. And then you've got those grammatical genders. English keeps it simple. But German, oh man, German's got masculine, feminine, and neuter.
So in German, every word has a secret identity you got to figure out.
Pretty much. And of course, we can't forget about those infamous compound words. That's where German really shows off a bit.
Okay, spill the beans. I've heard legends about these German monster words. Lay it on me.
All right, so picture this. You take a couple of words, maybe 3, sometimes even more, and you just like squish them all together. It's like a linguistic jigsaw puzzle, and bam. You've got this super specific term that captures a whole concept in one word.
Okay, I got to ask, what's the longest word in the dictionary then? Don't hold back.
All right, I was hoping you'd ask that. Drum roll, please. The longest word from the Duden Dictionary is Aufmerksamkeitsdefizit Hyperaktivitätsstörung.
Whoa. I think I pulled a muscle in my brain trying to say that. What does that tongue twister even mean?
You know, it's nothing too complicated, just attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
They took a whole medical diagnosis and turned it into a marathon word. That's wild. But speaking of words, all this talk about compounds got me thinking about how German and English, relate to each other. They both have words like house and mouse. We're like long-lost cousins or something.
We are. Remember that Proto-Germanic language from before? That's our common ancestor right there. But of course, English and German, they went their separate ways over time, which is why German throws those curveballs when you're trying to learn it.
There's moments where you're just like, wait, hold on, German. What are you doing? Give me an example.
All right, well, how about articles, those little words like the and a? Easy peasy in English, right? Well, in German, they change based on the case, like nominative, accusative, and they have to match the gender of the noun they're with. For example, the table is der Tisch, but say to the table, and suddenly it's dem Tisch.
So you have to be thinking about the word's role in the sentence, not just the meaning. What else you got?
One thing that surprises English speakers is that in German, every single letter wants to be heard. No silent letters here.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. It seems small, but it creates these combinations, these sounds you just won't find in English.
It's like German is all about being clear, precise, even if it takes a few extra syllables, right?
Exactly. And we haven't even touched on verb tenses. 3 basic ones in English. German laughs at your 3 tenses and gives you 6.
6. Verbs in German are apparently a lot more fun.
Aha, something like that.
But I think the most interesting thing has got to be how gender influences everything. It's not just picking the right article. The noun's gender affects verb endings, adjective endings. Everything has to agree. You don't see that kind of teamwork in English sentences.
It's all connected.
It's true. So, as we wrap up our deep dive into the German language, I think it's safe to say we've only scratched the surface. But hopefully, we've shown you that German is more than just a bunch of rules and words on a page. It's like this journey through the history of language, different cultures, even the way our brains make sense of communication. And that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. It might seem a little intimidating at first, but underneath it all, German is really all about logic and patterns.
And speaking of patterns, remember how German loves those super specific compound words? Here's a challenge for you all at home. How do you think they'd say smartphone as one word? What do you think? Any guesses? Let us know.
Now that's a question for another deep dive.
We want to hear your most creative German smartphone creations. Share them with us on social media. Maybe you'll even create the next big German word. Until then, happy language learning.